Hey there, how you doing? So we've got a week coming up, starting on Monday, the 20th of July, going right the way through to Sunday, the 26th. Now, what have we got in this week ahead? You'll see that I've put in a few things in red. I always put the big things in red, just so that it captures my attention. I don't miss it. But you can see we've got a lot this week. So we've got on Monday, the 20th, we've got two Jupiter aspects. One in a trine to Neptune, one in an opposition to Pluto. The reason I've highlighted this is because it's pretty rare. We don't have these very often. And then we've got a Jupiter sextile to Uranus on Tuesday the 21st. Now, we've also got Neptune later on this week in a sextile to Pluto on the 25th. These four are huge. In particular, Neptune sextile Pluto. I mean, this is really unusual. So these heavy hitting aspects are the underlying architecture for this week ahead. Jupiter in particular, which is a planet of expansion and growth, and Jupiter is the king of the gods in Olympus. So Jupiter is kind of like an emperor of sorts. The emperor energy is getting stronger, and the energy of sovereignty, like Jupiter in terms of gods, is pretty good to the people, as opposed to Saturn and maybe Pluto, which are a little bit more punishing. Jupiter is very much a planet associated with well-being. So there's this strong urge for a well-being, or for all of us to be an emperor in our own right, or to feel very sovereign. I see sovereignty as a huge theme coming up. And then Neptune sextile Pluto, I really get the feeling that we're starting to see how power is expressed in this world, plane or planet, however you have it in your mind's eye. I think how power is formed, how power is used around the world, I think these are going to get spoken about a lot, especially with this Jupiter in opposition to Pluto. In fact, if you want to know a bit more about those, I'm starting a new series about planetary pairings, planetary conversations, and I'm going to be releasing Jupiter and Pluto and their conversation that they're having very, very shortly, because it's important. Each of these planetary pairings are telling us something about how we're being moved, what kind of energies are influencing us and influencing the world around us. So there's some big stuff coming up about our own agency, how much choice we feel we have, how much freedom we feel we have, especially when it appears that we don't have much freedom. Like, what will we do to come back into a feeling of agency? Now, we've also got the sun going into Leo, which I think is pretty big. And one of the reasons for that is when there's a lot going on in a particular sign, I always think when something goes into that sign, the cumulative effect of them together works really strongly. There's a sort of synergy. Now, we've currently got Jupiter in the sign of Leo. So as the sun comes into Leo as well, the two of them are really going to kind of vibe together in quite a strong way. But I'm very mindful of the fact that we've got a solar eclipse coming up on the 12th of August. And this is a really gorgeous looking solar eclipse. I'm very excited about it being in Europe. I live just slightly north of Lisbon in Portugal, and in the Iberian Peninsula, in particular in Spain, we're actually going to get a really good view of the eclipse. And so that feels pretty good for me. But it's a lovely eclipse, and this is an eclipse that's really challenging us to express ourselves and to feel sovereign. And so the sun coming into Leo, I think that's quite exciting. It's almost bringing us clues along the way about how this next eclipse is going to affect us. So I think it's important to observe what comes up for you as the sun's going into Leo. Now, on the Leo front, I just want to mention next week on the 27th, the true north node is going to be going into Aquarius just here. That means the true south node is going to be heading into Leo too. So we'll have Jupiter, the sun, and the south node in Leo. So again, the Leo picture is building, and that's what's important. If you have lots of Leo, if you have an angle in Leo, then something is building, for you right now. There's a storyline evolving for you. Now, and the other thing that I think is really important in this week ahead, not that anything's more important than anything else, but I love this Mercury direct in the sign of Cancer. And I also like the fact that we've got the sun in a square to Chiron. And I'm going to link these two together because I think they are linked. So let's just take a step back. Mercury is currently retrograde and Mercury retrogrades last approximately 3 weeks. Now, we're now in a Mercury retrograde water pattern. And so this was the first Mercury retrograde in Cancer for quite a long time. And my own experience of it is that I have maybe been a bit confronted by things from childhood, from the past, from really deep pains and wounding. Um, in particular, themes of loyalty, possessiveness, themes of care and nurturing and mother, anything to do with mums, being a mum, being a daughter, for instance. Obviously, I'm a daughter and I'm also a mum of three. Um, all of these things can come up at the same time. Ancestral things come up, with the sign of Cancer. But Mercury retrograde is kind of dredging, and it's saying, look, where have you got pain, my dear? I'm talking about Mercury like he's a grandma here, but I feel like this energy actually feels quite grandmotherly. It's almost like, where does it hurt? Sit down. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's have a slice of cake, and let's just attend to your hurty. Let's attend to that little ouch that you've got. And it's giving us the opportunity to talk about things and get things off our chest and to really feel things. Now, whilst that could sound quite disruptive, and I have to say, I had a few realizations myself over the last couple of weeks that I was like, oh my goodness. Like, it's almost like my body's been revealing things to myself, and in conversation with my husband, it's been really helpful, very cathartic. And I don't know how it's been for you, but on the day when Mercury goes direct, we've also got the sun in a square to Chiron. Now, Chiron is about our wounds, but it's also about our sovereignty when we move beyond our wounds. Now, I've had people confront me on this in the past, saying, no, you're wrong. Chiron is definitely somewhere where you can't heal yourself. Chiron never healed himself. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And do you know what? He did cure himself of the pain. Okay, it killed him, but he consciously sorted himself out. He realized that when he was in his pain story as a victim, which I think Chiron really shows us victimhood, it shows us where things have happened to us, that it's been hard for us to process. And obviously, we all get very attached to our stories. And yet, at the end of the Chiron story, he faces his pain. And in doing so, it kills him. And now it's not that he couldn't cope with the emotions. The reason he was in pain in the first place was because a poisoned arrow went into his flesh, and he was immortal. And so he was doomed to always be in excruciating pain that should kill him, but couldn't kill him because he was immortal. And so in the end, and I think it's quite a wise decision, he swapped his immortality with a human. So he gave a human the ability to, live forever. And he became mortal so that he could absolutely let that poison go through his whole body. And it killed him, but it also released him from the story, and it released him from the pain. Now, the moral of the story, the way I'm telling it, is not that we have to die to release the pain. However, I think Chiron shows us where we feel a pain that feels like it's killing us. And yet the story of Chiron is we can't ever release our pain if we don't let it touch us. So if we keep it as a story, it's outside of us. If we say, my bad elbow, my bad little toe or something, we're naming it, but again, we're not integrating it. We're referring to it as if it's something separate from us. The whole purpose of Chiron is to integrate the pain. And I'm not telling this, to mock you if you feel like you're in pain at all. Definitely not. Because, what I see with this and Mercury retrograde is probably stirred up a lot. But the sun in a square to Chiron is, I think, challenging the stories of pain, because when we're in pain, it's very difficult to step into sovereignty. Because when we step into sovereignty, which is what the sun wants to do by going into Leo, as we step into sovereignty, we feel very differently. And so there's a very interesting, possibly difficult, relationship between those two on the day when Mercury goes direct. So I think anywhere where you're really ready to release something, I think that release is absolutely possible. And if you're highly conscious of something that's causing you pain, and yet it feels like you don't know how to release it, you can't release it, or you might be somebody who absolutely believes that the pain stays with you forever and it's unchanged, then that will be a tense. I suspect the 23rd could feel quite tense because that will be really coming in. However, even if you don't believe that you could come out of your pain ever, is it possible the pain could transform? Because this is something that I think is really possible. It's not to say the pain doesn't exist. It's not to say that the thing that caused the pain in the first place didn't happen. But can the pain be transformed? And that is what Chiron was involved in. So I think there's some really strong stories. Now, as part of a bigger story, we've got Pluto and Chiron, they're going to be in a square on and off until 2032. So whatever story is going on for you about the pain, it's unlikely to completely disappear because Pluto is a challenging bastard and he is always trying to get us to surrender to things and to accept things. And so to me, it just looks like whatever is painful and has held you back is coming up. Now, one way that I really see this happening, and that's stepping out of really delicate stuff, Mercury retrograde going through Cancer, I think, has taught us a lot about being young and possibly where we've not felt so visible. And as the sun goes into Leo, it's all about the visibility. And Jupiter's in Leo as well, which is absolutely about visibility. So we're coming into a time now where we're all getting a little nudge to be more visible. If you have any kind of pain around your own level of visibility, if you've had an invisibility spell on yourself, if it's felt safer to be incognito or hidden or keeping your views to yourself or whatever it is, I think that's a huge theme right now. The pain of invisibility is absolutely coming up as a strong theme. So there's some of the biggest themes. What I want to do now is just show you how these themes are, especially these four big movers. I just want to talk a little bit around them, mainly because I want to geek out. I really love observing patterns and how planets work together. So let's just talk a little bit around that. So this has actually just happened. This was actually on Saturday, but it still forms part of the story. So Uranus and Pluto have just made an exact trine. You'll see there it is on the 18th, and there's another 1, 2, 3, 4. There's another 4 of them. So Uranus and Pluto are in a trine pattern right now, and there's going to be 5 of them between 2026 and 2028. These are bringing in, I think, a need to break away and being inventive and to feel really, really free, whilst also dropping a lot of attachments. It's almost like, how can I feel freedom and be unattached? There are political and civilizationary effects of these two planets in a trine as well. But again, I just want to keep it very much centered on the human experience. So at the moment, we're talking about our own freedom. How can we feel free? How can we feel that we can invent and create from a place of freedom? How can we honor our independent thought? So that's a really strong one. Now, the last time there was a trine was in 1922. It was a water one. But the last time there was an air one, like the one we've got right now, is in 1885. So there are themes coming back from 1885, the early 1920s to now. Now, we might not understand where they live exactly. However, one thing I would say is I wonder where your freedom has come from. Where has the concept of independent thought come from? Where has the concept that we could live free lives and that we maybe have a life that we can create ourselves? How has that changed from the 1920s? How has that changed from the 80s? So I will be doing a few different planet to planet episodes where I'm going to explore this. I will be exploring this in due course, but it's just to say that it's pretty rare. And so right now, one of our questions is, how can we be a lot more free? And what is the nature of our independence? Now, the next one, this is happening on Monday. Jupiter trine Neptune, not quite as rare as the other one. There's a trine between Jupiter and Neptune every 4 years, and then 8, and then 4 years, and then 8 years. There's a very definite pattern with these. You'll see right now the trines are happening in fire signs. Before that, they were in water signs. Before that, they were in air signs. And so they go through the elements. So right now, we're at the start of fire sign trines between Jupiter and Neptune over the next 14 years or so. So there's a new kind of imagination. There's a new kind of, Neptune's all about the imagination and the illusory, and also very much about ideals, ideologies and things. And so there's this new kind of like uprushing wave of ideology that is highly expressed, highly felt. Creativity is going to become really obvious. People born with this kind of aspect are going to be really loving this. If you've got a Neptune and Jupiter aspect, you'll be really tuning into this at the moment. There's a real impulse to be independently creating and to really love our intuition. Now, the last time there was a fire sign trine between these two was back in 1979. So whatever was going on around 1979 and just before that, throughout the 1970s, when the fire sign, when Neptune was in Sagittarius and when Jupiter connected with Neptune in a trine, like the creativity, the kind of spiky creativity that was coming up in the 70s, like punk music and stuff like that. There's a glam rock. I mean, I just know these retrospectively. I think we're going to have quite a glittery, obvious self-expression. This is interesting, and I think it's also highly spiritual as well. And it's where our spirituality is really going to get expressed. Then we've also got Jupiter in opposition to Pluto. I'm going to be releasing something alongside this about Pluto and Jupiter in their opposition. They've got very different ways of expressing themselves. This happens every 12 to 13 years. So the previous one was in 2014, 2013, 2014, then around 2000, then to 1988. So the last time we had Jupiter in a fire sign and Pluto in an air sign in this opposition was in 1975. So again, we've got another knockback to the 1970s. Where were people rising up for freedom and trying to find their own way? Again, I'm going to be discussing that in a separate video, but there is definitely this like feeling of more freedom that needs to come in. Again, what was going on in the 1970s, even if you're born after the 1970s, you were still born into a world that had existed in the 1970s. Your parents had gone through the 1970s, and whatever was being born with this opposition will be sewed into your consciousness. So I really think what's going on right now is taking us back to feelings of independence, rising up in creativity because of the trine with Neptune. There's I suffice to say, there's a lot of these aspects building a whole new picture for us, and they're all happening at the same time and all really relating to the past. We've got Jupiter sextile Uranus. Now, I really like Jupiter and Uranus as planetary pairings. In fact, I met my husband as Jupiter and Uranus met. They were when they came together in their conjunction, it was right at the start of my 5th house, all to do with romance and children, and the rest is history. Basically, it caused such a shift in my life. So this is huge. I love Jupiter and Uranus. Jupiter's expansive, Uranus is about to bring in change, and quite radical change sometimes. So they have got a pattern of every 4 years, and then every 9 or 10 years, then every 4 years, then every 9 and 10. So they come into a sextile with that frequency. Now, currently, we're in a fire and air sextile with Jupiter in fire and Uranus in air. The last time they did this together was in 1999. However, the last actual sextile between them was in 22. They're all the dates here. But essentially, these are very creative. They're bringing us into a place of breaking free of your ideas and just trying something and expanding through something. So I think they really add something. Something is about to break free and gather speed with it. Now, the last one I want to share is Neptune sextile Pluto, because this is our longest running one. It takes quite a long time for it to happen. I mean, the funny thing is, Neptune and Pluto have actually been in a sextile since the 1940s. However, they only go into an exact sextile a few times. So between 1950 and 56, they had 13 sextiles, then nothing. Then in 1976 to 86, they had 20 sextiles. And now they're starting a new series of sextiles, exact sextiles, where they're 60 degrees away from each other. There's going to be 13 of them between now and 2032. When these two come into sextiles, themes of power and illusion and flow and circulation are really, really critical for us. So things to do with the flow of energy, gas, petrol, oil, flows of currency. And currency is interesting in and of itself. If you look at the word current and sea, currency, I know it's written differently, but you've got a current and it's a sea. It's like it's like something that is moving through a field. I really feel that Neptune is a field of energy and Pluto is the container that has the power over it. So we've got some really big conversations to have. And again, I'm going to be recording something like separate about that. These two planets have a 492 to 493 year cycle. And the last time they came together, interestingly enough, was at 7 degrees Gemini. And Uranus is not far off there at the moment. And Mars is just the other side of this. This seems to be quite an interesting little position. So the Pluto and Neptune sextile is definitely something I've got my eye on. So there you have it. They are the overall flows that I see going on in this week ahead. Like I said, I will break this down on a day-by-day basis very shortly. But that's just to give you a heads up. Suffice to say, what we're experiencing right now is not common astrology. Like, the first air trine since 1885, the first fire trine between Jupiter and Neptune since 1979, the first sextile since 1986 in terms of Neptune and Pluto. These are very, very rare things that are happening. And so my advice, actually, as an overview for this week ahead, is actually to bide your time, keep your peepers open, keep your ears listening, sense what is going on around you, and just give yourself the luxury to take your time to make your mind up. It's not a good time to rush into anything. Actually, the best thing to do is observe what's going on, see what's coming up in you, what ancient stories are coming up to be heard and seen. Remember that thing about Sun square Chiron and the sun being in Leo. Anything that we have wounded about ourselves, about being seen, being like taking up space. If you've got some kind of wounding about being here right now and taking up space, then I think that's where I would put my attention, is how can I feel good in myself to be here in myself right now. That's the work of this week ahead. So anyway, I hope that was helpful for you. Lots and lots of love. I look forward to continuing these conversations, because I think the planets are talking to us all the time. So feel free to share your thoughts below, and I'll catch up with you all soon. Lots of love. Bye for now.